Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Deborah Finko. She is from Beech, Brook Farm Horse Rescue, and it's her first time on the show, so welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us about Beech, Brook Farm, the horse rescue, where it is and what it's all about.
So we're located in Mystic, Connecticut, and we started in 2007. We got our 501c3 status in 2009, and that's when we really started to grow. And what we're about is saving horses from slaughter, from neglect, and so we get horses from a variety of places. We've got people who surrender horses that they can't afford to care for any longer. We go to auctions or buy horses from auctions so that they don't get shipped to slaughter. And we also get horses through animal control where there's a neglect situation and they'll call us. And what a lot of people don't realize is horses are still slaughtered. About 160,000 United States, U.S. horses are slaughtered every year.
Why? Why?
For food consumption primarily. So they're not slaughtered in the U.S. All the U.S. slaughter plants were closed earlier in 2000. But there have been a lot of efforts, most recently in Wyoming, to reopen slaughterhouses here. But the horses currently are shipped to Canada and to Mexico, and they're slaughtered, and about 90% of the meat is actually used for human consumption. So yeah, it's shipped. That's
I thought you were going to say for animals, for dogs.
About 10% is used for animal feed, for zoo type things, but 90% is consumed by humans. It's very popular in Europe and in Asia, and so they're slaughtered in Canada and Mexico, and then the meat is sent to Europe or Asia for human consumption, and it's actually very expensive meat in Europe. And you know, I personally, I'm not a meat eater much at all, but I can't fathom wanting to even eat a horse. Over the lifetime of a horse, you put lots of worming medicine and you treat them with antibiotics, and there's a lot of not so great things in horse meat, but aside from the fact that they're pets and really shouldn't be slaughtered for that sort of thing. But we try to prevent that from happening. So even though we're very small, our goal is to bring in horses that potentially could be shipped to slaughter. So a lot of our horses that come from auction barns, that's directly preventing them from going to an auction or being shipped to slaughter.
And there's a lot of other places like yours all around the country that are working hard like you are.
There are. There's lots of small scale rescues more like us. You know, we've saved to date 109 horses and 110 maybe since we started. But like I said, every year 160,000 go to slaughter. So there are a lot of organizations. There's several other rescues that are in Connecticut, as well as in New England. There's some very large organizations. But frankly, the rescues cannot absorb all these extra horses in the event that eventually the United States does not allow horses to be sent to Mexico or Canada. So there's got to be some other solutions to the problem.
Now I understand why that actually happens. That was going to be one of my questions. But there must have been an outcry at some point for the United States to stop allowing slaughterhouses in the first place, right?
There was, and I think it was 2008 the last slaughterhouse in the U.S. closed. But like I said, since then there's been a lot of efforts to reopen slaughterhouses. And there was a slaughterhouse that was going to reopen in Wyoming, but the legislation is such that right now there's no funding available for people to do the inspections at the slaughterhouses. And so there's been a lot of effort to prevent that funding to go forward, and it has been stopped. So slaughterhouses at this point cannot reopen in the U.S.
What did they want to reopen it for? Is it for them? Is it the people who want to? Is it just a commodity thing for them? Is it just money?
So it's a business. I mean, there's a lot of people right now, we call them kill buyers. They make their money by purchasing horses at a low amount compared to what they can then take them to a slaughterhouse and sell them for and make a profit. So it's a business for a lot of people. They don't particularly have any compassion about horses. It's just, it's strictly a business for them.
And a horse is a large animal, so for them, there's a lot of meat there, I guess, right?
Yeah. You know, most horses average about 1,000 pounds, although the meat weight is less than that. But The prices vary, but it's a business, and so obviously a lot of people would like to see it. Some people think it's actually would be a solution to the excessive number of horses. I don't agree with that, but that is an argument you will hear. But that's what our rescue is all about, is really trying to prevent horses from being slaughtered, from being neglected, and we're a place that they can land, and when they come to our rescue, usually we then have to train them so that they can be rideable, or we have to work with them to overcome maybe behavioral or mental aspects that make them not adoptable at that point. So we invest time in training them and getting them to be adoptable. We're not a sanctuary. We're not intended to be. We obviously have some horses that have been with us for a number of years, but our intent is to be able to find homes for all of our horses, and that's what gets us excited, finding great homes for the horses.
And that's a much taller task than your typical humane society or animal shelter when you're dealing with dogs or cats or domesticated animals that can fit in a house or an apartment. Your task is much grander, right?
Yeah, and I say horses. We do have smaller ones. They probably wouldn't fit in the house, but we also rescue miniature horses and miniature donkeys, and so not only do you need more land, obviously most townships require anywhere from 2 to 5 acres to be able to have a farm animal. It costs more. An average size horse, we tell people to expect that it's going to cost them $4,000 a year at least for boarding it somewhere, for feed, for regular farrier vet type cost, and that can go up much higher. So it is a more expensive endeavor to adopt an animal from us.
How'd you get involved? Like, take us way back to when you sort of saw it swelling in you that you have interest in maybe in animals in general from when you were a child, right?
Yeah, so I've always been around animals. My dad's a veterinarian. I grew up with animals. We had lots of dogs. And as a kid, I would go up to a horse farm and I would volunteer in exchange for riding an older horse that they had. And I did that for a long time. But getting actually into the rescue was more my daughter Ariel's suggestion. We had our own horses. She and I each had a horse. And one day she said, you know, I'm really upset about all this news I hear about horses being slaughtered. Why don't we start trying to do something? I think she was 13. And so first she suggested we foster horses for another rescue. So
now, did you have a farm already or a stable?
I did. I had the land where we currently have the rescue. It's 14 acres in Mystic. And so we started to foster, we just fostered a donkey for another rescue. And I wasn't really happy with where he ended up going for his permanent home. And so then my daughter said, well, let's start our own rescue. And so I was like, oh, okay, let's do that.
Easy for her to say, by the way.
Yeah, well, she was home at the time. So she was home for about 3 years, and she did help me when she was home. She'd help ride the new horses, help get them so they could be ridden. So we started very small in 2007, just rescuing 2-3 horses, donkeys a year. And then in 2009, Ariel contacted the paper and got them to write an article, and they had a really nice article on the front page of one of the weekly papers. And that generated a lot of interest in our rescue, and people started calling me and offering to volunteer. So volunteers are critical to our rescue. Most of our support staff is non-paid volunteers. And so once the article ran, we got a lot of people calling us, and we started having a lot of volunteers come in. The volunteers do a variety of things, from cleaning out stalls, watering, feeding, helping repair fences.
I understand the horses have the ability to pile up quite a bit in their stall. My director wanted me to ask that question.
Yeah. So a horse can generate 50 pounds of poop a day. And if we've got...
So can my director, by the way.
And if we've got 20 horses on the farm, I mean, do the math, you've got a lot of poop being generated. So actually we've had to go to putting it in dumpsters and having it hauled off because we generate so much. But that's one of the things that the volunteers help do, is clean up a lot of the mess so that we can remove it from the facility and keep a clean environment for the horses. But that's, I mean, there's a huge need for having volunteers, and once we started getting a large number of volunteers, it allowed us to expand. And we started rescuing more horses, so we went from 2 to 3 horses a year to where one year we pulled 30 horses and donkeys.
Wow.
Right now, we average about 15 to 20 per year that we rescue, bring them in, train them, and then try to adopt them out.
What's your capacity at this point?
Right now, we've got capacity for 12 what I call full-sized horses, and then about 8 miniature horses, miniature donkeys. But we are looking to expand. We're currently seeking land to expand in the general area, Stonington, North Stonington, Mystic, Groton, East Lyme kind of area. And so we've been looking for a while. We're looking for cleared land that we can put a new facility on, either that we purchase at a reasonable price. Best thing would be if somebody wanted to donate some land to us, tax write-off.
Now, if they donate, you still would prefer cleared land because you know, treed land is very expensive?
Yeah, it's prohibitively expensive to have to clear the land and do everything that's needed to put in pastures and whatnot.
When you were talking about there was a point where you weren't happy with one adoption where the horse or the donkey went, are you vigilant and scrutinize where every one of the potential animals will go to make sure that it's a right fit?
Yeah, that's really a good question. So people fill out an adoption application, and we check with their veterinarian if they've already got horses with their farrier, or the farrier is the person that does the feed on the horse, and with references. We also Google them because it's amazing what you can sometimes find on the internet. And we also check with their local land zoning to make sure that they actually are allowed to have farm animals and what the capacity is, because some townships require an acre per horse. And we actually have had situations where people applied to adopt and they didn't have land that met the zoning regulations. So we actually do a pretty exhaustive investigation on people. We require them to come to the farm and meet the horse to make sure it's going to be a good chemistry.
Why wouldn't they want to meet him in the first place?
Some people have contacted us and want to purchase, adopt without meeting an animal, and we don't allow that. But we have gotten inquiries of that nature. They fall in love with the picture, but to me, the chemistry and being able to make sure that you're going to get along with the animal and be able to handle it and manage it is critical. So we do require a site visit. For a rideable horse, many times people come multiple times to ride the horse and make sure that they can ride it well. And so we do a lot of work up front to make sure that we think they're a suitable person for the animal. And then after they adopt, we actually follow up with them.
That was going to be my next question.
For 3 years, they're required to send us records to ensure that they're keeping the animal vaccinated, that they send us pictures to show that it's in good body weight, and they do that for 3 years. And then after 3 years, we feel that that probably demonstrates that they're going to be a good adopter, and so we don't continue to follow them. That being said, so many of our adopters just frequently are sending us pictures all the time for us to post on Facebook. They stay in touch well after that 3 years.
So can you observe and tell if a horse is happy or not in his or her new surroundings? Can you kind of sense their happiness?
You know, horses don't emote emotions to the extent that people do, but generally, you know, if you can tell in a lot of ways just by looking at how they interact with people, with the other horses. Do they seem stressed? Have they lost weight? So you can get a good feel from whether or not, from observing them and just looking at their behavior as to whether they're happy in their new environment.
We're going to take a break and come back. I want you to give out the website to the farm, and people can go and learn more. Then we'll come back and talk more, okay?
It's www.beechbrookfarm.homestead.com.
We will take a break and come back. She is Deborah Finko. I am Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay right there. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Deborah Finko of Beech Brook Farm. It's a horse rescue. Now, we've been talking about horses a lot, and you mentioned donkeys too. Tell me about donkeys, and why do people have them?
why do people have them? They have them for a variety of reasons. A lot of people adopt from us because they want them as protection. So donkeys are really good at keeping away things like coyotes and foxes. And so people who have hobby farms that have sheep or cows or chickens, a lot of times they like having donkeys to help protect their farm. Actually, earlier this year, we adopted 2 donkeys out to a woman who had a sheep farm. She'd lost 23 baby sheep to the.
Oh my goodness!
She assumes it was coyotes.
There's a big coyote problem lately.
Yeah. And so she adopted 2 of our donkeys, and she'd not lost a single baby since she'd adopted them. Donkeys are different than horses. They're a lot more. They're brave. They tend to chase after things that come into their pen as opposed to running away. Horses have much more of a flight instinct. Donkeys tend to stand their ground a bit more.
Is that the stubborn nature of donkeys?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a misconception to say that they're stubborn. Donkeys are actually extremely smart, and donkeys like to think about what you're asking them to do. So some people label that as stubborn. A donkey may stop and think about whether it wants to do something before it will do it. And then people say it's stubborn, it won't move forward. But it's really because they're so intelligent. I love donkeys. They're just they have
a personality. It seems like
they're much more friendly.
Yeah?
I mean, I'm generalizing, but in general, donkeys they love affection. They love coming up to you, almost like dogs. They really seek you out and want attention, and they're brave. And they do have very unique personalities. We've had several baby donkeys born at the farm, so we've rescued mares, jennies from auctions that were pregnant, or we didn't necessarily know at the time. And so we've had some babies born, and baby donkeys are just the cutest little things.
And will there be some pictures that we can show throughout the show?
Yes, we have lots of baby donkey pictures.
One thing I want to get into is things like veterinarian needs. Your husband is he's not a veterinarian.
No, my father's a vet,
Okay,
but unfortunately he doesn't live here. He lives in Georgia.
That would have been very convenient.
Yeah, it would have been nice. Although he's retired, so he hasn't kept his license up. But we have a number of veterinarians, but our primary veterinarian is a practice called Twin Pines Equine veterinarians, Ashley and Matt. They're our primary veterinarians. And then we have other veterinarians that we use because sometimes maybe they can't come. And so, or maybe there's a specialty that another veterinary practice has. So we use them, and we use them a lot because a lot of the animals, when we get them, especially from auction, are sick. Right now we've got 2 sick horses. One presumptively had diagnosis of strangles, which is a highly infectious bacterial pathogen that horses can get, and it can spread throughout a farm. So when we get new horses in, we have to isolate them and keep them in quarantine. So a lot of times they come to us sick and they've got issues. And we've got another horse, Rhett, that's about to have, actually I was just going back and forth with the vet today about setting up an appointment so he can have some skull x-rays. He's got some nasal discharge and problems, and it looks like he maybe has an infection up in his nasal passage, or maybe he has an abscessed tooth, but it can get very expensive. We spend a lot of money on veterinary care to provide the horses with the best quality of care. And
potential adopters should, be aware, that there will be veterinary costs.
Yes, so most, routine veterinary costs, you have to get shots annually. You have to worm every 8 weeks or so. Those are, and farrier expenses every 6 to 8 weeks. Those are pretty standard costs. Sometimes you can get an animal that maybe has an issue that will cost you additional amounts as well.
Now, so when somebody adopts, is there some sort of aside from you checking their background and making sure there's compatibility, there's also some training that goes on, not only with them, but also with your volunteers, not necessarily veterinary-wise, but just kind of common sense, basic skill stuff?
Yeah, so most people who adopt from us, although not all, actually have some previous horse experience. As for horses that are rideable, they would have had previous experience. We don't adopt a rideable horse out to somebody that doesn't have that sort of experience. So those are things we look into when we're screening them. But we do have people who have not had horses before that adopt donkeys or miniature horses. And a lot of times what we encourage them or put into their contract that they sign is that they work with a trainer or work with an experienced person, so they have ongoing learnings with respect to how to take care of the animals and whatnot. At our facility, we have a trainer that works with our horses that we pay. We wish we had more money and we could pay them to do more work, but we do have a trainer that works with our horses, starting horses under saddle, working to desensitize and overcome, traumatic experiences the horse maybe previously had that has to be overcome before we can really progress them to saddle work. I'm working with just basic skills, teaching horses to lead, to pick up their feet. A lot of the donkeys we get in don't know those skills, and so a lot of times my volunteers are helping with those more basic skills. And we have a training session, and we actually mentor our volunteers to help teach them skills to work with horses so they can learn as well.
And I assume that you are always looking for volunteers.
Always.
What are you looking for? Anything specific?
We have people who come who've never worked with horses before to people who've had extensive experience. So it can really run the gamut if you want to work at the farm. We also have other opportunities helping with PR, with fundraising, with photography, promoting our animals. So there's a lot of different things that we can use in terms of volunteer skills. But if you want to work at the farm, we have training session. We try to, like I said, mentor them to teach them skills if they really want to learn to work with horses. So there's a lot of opportunities, and it's a great workout. You don't have to pay to go to a gym.
Yeah.
And it is hard. And, we're moving wheelbarrows filled with hundreds of pounds of manure. But fundraising and bringing in money is crucial to be able to continue to do what we do, because when I say we get horses from auction, we don't get them for free. We have to pay the auctioneer to get those horses out of the auction. We pay to get them transported to Connecticut. We then usually have a number of veterinary expenses associated with that horse. And our fee that we charge to adopt only recoups maybe a tenth of what we've spent on that horse. So fundraisers and donations are critical for us to continue to save more horses and donkeys.
And again, you're looking to expand. You're looking for land.
We are. Right? We are. We're looking for cleared land in the general Mystic area within about 20, 30 miles furthest away, since all of our volunteer base is in this area. We'd like at least 20 acres, and we need to find a place so that we can continue to save a lot of horses and donkeys.
Must have been a tough winter for you this past winter, huh?
It was brutal, and if I brought my volunteers here, they would complain even more.
Shoveled snow more than they shoveled horse manure, right?
Yeah, well, we did have a fundraiser to buy a snowblower, so we were able to do some snow blowing of some trails, but it's been a brutal winter. During one of the blizzards, I actually had to walk from where I live over to the rescue because they hadn't cleared the roads, so I could get over there to then feed the horses.
Yeah.
And snow was up to my knees. I sound like my grandparents, complaining about,
we
we walk through snow up to our knees.
Uphill each day.
But it was a rough winter, and it still is, because the snow is still melting. Yeah. And with each melt, it uncovers horse poop that didn't get cleaned out of the pen, and then it creates what I call poop soup. So we're still battling the hard winter, but it has been very tough.
Deborah Finko from the Beech Brook Farm Horse Sanctuary. It's not really a sanctuary, it's a rescue, and because we did make a distinction between that. I hope people will go to the website. I hope people will come out, maybe adopt or at least volunteer, because it's a great cause, and we thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks.
You can see this show and many others on our YouTube sites. Until next time, I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Take care.